Hey guys, this is PJ for Inverted Podcast number 20. And oh, do we have a podcast for you? This is my friend, Will.
Hi.
Yeah. It's good to have you here, Will.
Yeah.
When was the first time we even talked about this podcast?
It was like several months ago.
Yes.
Because I told you that I was coming up on 4 years, and I was like, hey, it'd be kind of be a good idea, like it came to me one day, like, hey, can you kind of bring it up in one of your sermons? And you're like, no, I got a better idea.
Right.
Let's do a podcast about it.
And here we are,
Yeah.
right? Several months later.
Yep.
And so we're still coming up with the title lesson, Overcoming Addiction, Redemption, but you have a story to tell.
Yes.
And so I am super excited to be able to sit here. And we're just going to jump in with questions. Is that cool?
Yeah.
So where are you from?
I'm originally born and raised in Fort Worth.
Okay, Fort Worth.
Yep.
Okay.
I was born at the old Harris Methodist down on Camp Bowie. Now it's actually the college right there across the street from McDonald's, if you know anything about that area.
Yeah.
I lived...
What was the home like? What kind of home life did you grow up in?
So, like, as far as I can remember, like, it was me, my dad, and my sister.
Okay.
Like, before who I call my mom kind of showed up into the picture.
Yes.
Apparently that they had been friends like all the way through grade school.
Okay.
And decided to say, hey, let's kind of get together. And I remember living in an apartment up of Williams Road in 377, kind of like towards where Zebo's Park is.
Okay.
Where that Texaco gas station.
Okay.
So if you make that left at that red light,
right,
the little 2-story blue.
I'm trusting you because I have no idea where you are right now. I know a few Texacos in Fort Worth, but I don't know if it's the right ones.
Yeah.
But how old were you when you lived there?
I was young, like young, like 2, 3, still.
All right.
Maybe even younger than that.
And so how was life? What was life like growing up in the home?
It was pretty good for the most part, as far as I can remember. There was always that, brother sister rivalry that happened.
That you always have.
And like just to kind of give you an instance, like I was probably still a baby, and like I kind of remember this, but I kind of don't. But my sister and my dad kind of talk about it. My dad went inside somewhere, and he drove a 1969 Chevelle Malibu. Okay, and somehow he noticed that the car was rolling backwards. My sister had jumped in the driver's seat, put it in neutral, and as it started rolling back, and then check this out. She blames me when I'm asleep in a car seat in the back seat.
That's a sister for you, right? Yeah. That's a sister. So you jump forward, you get into junior high, high school. Are you still in the same home?
Well, kind of, sort of. Like, I'm with the same family. The one who I call my mom, she had 2 other daughters. So it was her oldest daughter, Brandy, her second oldest, or her youngest daughter, Chrissy. Then it was my actual sister. Right. And then me. My dad was there too. He did, he kind of made sure, that no matter how tired he was from doing mechanics, like when he came home, if I was playing a video game on the Nintendo 64, that's to tell you how old I am.
Yeah. I remember once before that.
Yeah. Atari, Sega Genesis. Odyssey. I remember those.
Like, you remember the Odyssey?
Like my dad was.
Commodore 64?
Yeah.
Okay.
He would always take time to, no matter what game I was playing, he would always take time to hop on the game with me, even if it was just for, 10, 15, 20 minutes.
So he was present.
Yeah, he was present.
A good dad?
As far as I know, he was. Yeah. My dad, eventually had to move out of the house.
Your dad did?
Yeah, because of an incident of supposedly he had touched my sister.
Okay.
And and possibly some other girls that were around.
So he made choices that removed him from the home.
Yes.
You're still living with your stepmom.
Yeah. And
how old were you at this point?
I was probably, she's like 3 years older than me. So I was like 8, 9, 10, somewhere around there. I was 4th, 5th grade. Somewhere around there.
And so you were living with your stepmom, and she had 2 daughters?
Yes.
And so when your dad was accused of this stuff, was there blame? Not blame, but were you kind of seen as a part of him and not really accepted anymore?
I don't really know, because like when all this stuff started happening, my mom kind of kept me in the dark about it.
Yeah.
Because she knew that, it would tear me apart.
Yes.
And her mom, actually her dad was going through the same thing at the same time.
Okay.
Now that I know he did, because like when grandma was away at work.
Yeah. You saw some of those things.
Yeah.
So it was a difficult, although it was a home where I guess things you were provided for.
Yes.
There was a lot of stuff happening in the home.
Yes.
When did you, because I know you eventually had to move out, right? You kind of were kicked out in a way, right?
I didn't get kicked out until like I was like in high school, when my mom started dating the guy that was my dad's best friend.
Okay.
And but like I noticed like things were starting to, in between that time and the time that they actually started dating.
You were kind of pushed to the side?
Well, I mean, I think I kind of pushed myself into the hole.
Right.
Because, like, for one, my sister was gone. She was in CPS.
Yeah.
My dad was living at the friend who my mom ended up starting dating several years later. So, like, I had, like, a lot of resentment towards the world. Like, like, even though I didn't think this at the time of when that happened, I was more like, why is this happening? Why? My whole entire world came crumbling down.
Yeah.
And
you had no control.
Yeah,
it's not like choices you made that got you there, or choices you made for your dad.
Yeah.
You were just a result of other people's choices.
And and when I asked for answers, they just kind of either shunned it away or changed the subject, just to keep me from, I think, at the time, it hurt.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I knew my mom was doing it to protect me from hurting. Yeah. Because like my dad was kind of like my best friend, kind of, sort of.
You kind of saw him as a hero.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah. I see it still hits pretty hard right now, doesn't it? And thank you for being vulnerable. You need to stop for a second?
Okay. No. I mean, it still hurts because sometimes still to this day, like I kind of look back, I'm like, I'm still full of them questions of like, what if?
Yeah.
What if, my dad was still around when I needed him the most?
Right.
Because like when my dad, like I was able to see my father until like they started doing the hearing. Then they told me like I couldn't see him anymore. Yeah. My stepmom would bring me out to where he was with his friend, the one who she started dating. And so when that happened, not only did my whole entire world got flipped down inside out even more, like my world went black. Yeah.
And that's when drugs entered.
Well, I mean, I was still kind of young at this time.
Okay.
And like all the men that came into my life, I'm trying not to to say the words that are coming to my head, but the men who came into my life abused me, like mentally and physically.
Yeah.
Because I was kind of a rebellious,
Right.
And so like when my mom worked, I think 2 jobs to support the household. So she left it up to my youngest stepsister's boyfriend's dad, who was living, to kind of punish me a little bit. And it's like sometimes he took it a little bit too far, I think.
Yeah.
So, so like all the men that came to my life were
not healthy.
No, we're not healthy, and I thought my stepdad, the one that I thought he was, but he was just a more, just added something more to, like, it takes me, just because of the men that came into my life after my dad went away and I couldn't see him anymore. It takes me a lot to trust.
That's what I was about to get to. Trust is a difficult thing, and which would make absolute sense, right? Because everyone that came in and became that role, that you quickly learned that you couldn't trust, even though you're supposed to. I mean, anyone that walked through the door, they would have to prove themselves. Right. And most of the time they proved that they were not trustworthy.
Right.
When did drugs come onto the scene for you, Will?
I was probably middle school.
Okay.
I started smoking pot.
Okay.
And I felt like, for the first time, since all of that happened, that like it made me feel a part of instead of distant.
So it made you feel a part of a community, a group of people. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it started off there, just smoking pot until I was probably like a freshman in high school.
Okay. And pot led to
methamphetamines, and kind of to whatever I could get my hands on at that time. Whatever everybody was doing at the time, because like I felt a part of, and I wanted to be a part of. Right. So it kind of.
Did you know you were doing something that would damage you? Or you didn't care?
I didn't really know at that time.
Okay. It just felt good to belong.
Yes, like I didn't have to, hide behind the sorry. It made me into the person who I thought I wanted to be.
Yes.
So, and then like, it was back in high school. It was like, I could do it once and not touch it, for a while. But, I still smoked cigarettes. I still smoked pot every day. But the other stuff, it was just, once in every once in a while thing. So when I was probably about 17, 18 is when that addiction really kind of took off. And at the time, I thought I was having fun. I was living great. I was doing good. But I didn't know at the time that I was actually pushing the only family that I've known since I was little. I was pushing them farther and farther away. Right. And it led me to being kicked out because I had left the place. I lived in a bus, an old school bus that was turned into an RV.
That's cool.
That when we were all younger, we all used to all the kids would load up. Everybody would load up in 2 or 3 vans, and we took a family vacation on the South Padre. Okay. So like this bus has seen miles and miles.
You can tell that it means a lot to you still because of the smile that's on your face.
I mean, that was probably like one of the best highlights of my childhood.
That's cool.
Being able to go down to the Gulf of Mexico with family and, for a week.
And just having fun with
fun. Like I can tell you like a story. Like one night we get there, and it's like probably I don't know what time we hear a loud scream, and a crab had made it into somebody's tent, and they're all running around with buckets trying to catch it to throw it out the tent.
So it was a magic school bus. You're the original magic school bus.
I remember like with me and my cousins, the clear jellyfish, that are flat, picking them up and throwing them at each other because they don't sting you, believe it or not. It's only like the blue ones with the
Portuguese man-o-war, I think.
Something like that.
I wish my name was Portuguese man-o-war. That'd be awesome. But anyway, so let's stay on track because both of us ADHD kind of guys.
ADD,
we're just gonna. This is gonna be like a 5-hour podcast. Part 1 of episode 36. Okay, but I don't want to rush it, but I do want people to be able to catch it. So drugs took you on the street.
Yes.
And it got dark.
Yes. Like I was chronically homeless for a little bit. And then I started going to the NA meetings on the west side of Fort Worth. And somebody helped me out. Like I got to stay one night in the shop. They fed me. I mean, I still remember this to this day. Stayed in a little bitty bedroom apartment with like a toilet and, a bed. I slept there for the night, and then early that morning, this couple who lives in Joshua came and picked me up. Yeah. And I went to their house. It was around Christmas time, Thanksgiving, Christmas, somewhere around there. They let me stay in their house.
Was that amazing?
Yes.
I mean, were you like, what's wrong with these people? Are they going to like take me in the back and make me meet Jesus faster? Or
well, like, I mean, I kind of talked with them, a little bit. So I was able to stay with them in this nice house in Joshua. Had my own room. Got to stay with the family, eat dinner with the family, and it was, now that right there was probably more of when I felt more part of than anything else.
Right. How old were you at this point?
I want to say like 18, 19.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was still kind of young.
How long did you stay with them?
I want to say less than a year because let's just say even though like they allowed me to smoke because they smoke too. Uh-huh. Like one of my stocking stuffers was a carton of cigarettes. So like, I ended up, I would work, and I would go to school. My first job was Chicken Express, actually in Joshua.
Okay.
So like I would go from school to work sometimes. And I don't remember exactly how I got to school or how I got to my job, but somehow I made it.
Okay. Good.
So like I would have a pack of cigarettes in my pocket. So I got in trouble because it fell out in front of the teacher.
Yeah.
Luckily, he didn't take them from me. He just let me pick them up and put them back in my pocket. Well, they call people I'm staying with, tell them this is what happened, da 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 da. So I get in trouble.
You leave their house?
No, I didn't leave their house because part of their rules was I had to stay clean and go to school.
Yeah.
So I didn't really get kicked out of their house until one instance. I had a teacher. It was like a financial class that I had to have to graduate. Me and him, we got into a little argument. So I started, I'm like, hey, because I talked to the principal, like, hey, look, there's some times where, like, I just feel like I just want to go off on these people, and I know I'm not supposed to, because, like, when I went to Joshua High School, it was in between the Christmas and the New Year's break this semester. Right. So, like, half of my classes were already in the middle of some of their lessons.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to say that I was perfect with grades and stuff, but, like, I started failing miserably. I'm talking like 40s, 50s grades.
But there's also a lot going on. I mean, you still have the previous life and your dad and all these stepdads coming in. So there's a lot of stuff here, even though you were given a chance with these people.
Right.
Then that ends.
Yes.
Then you go back to the street.
Well, I started living with a guy that worked at Chicken Express.
Okay.
He lived with his grandma. I slept on the couch. He slept on his bed in
his bedroom.
Yeah, so it was kind of like, like we were like living in a college dorm. One person sleeping on the couch, one person sleeping on the bed.
Yeah.
I only had to pay like $150 every 2 weeks.
But then that ended.
Yeah, that ended. And
because of drugs as well?
No, I mean, I was still smoking pot.
Okay.
Even while I was living with the people, but I never got caught for smoking pot. Like, I even brought pot in their house and I got caught with it because I knew to keep it on me.
How dark did it get?
It didn't start getting dark until I actually wound it on the streets in downtown Fort Worth, when the husband of who I used to live with said, "I'm sorry, I have to do this, but there's no other choice." When I landed the streets, when my feet hit the pavement, like, I thought life was real. Life got very, very real for me at 19, 20 years old.
And I remember you telling me the story. They kind of just, and I don't want to use it like this, but I remember you telling me it's kind of like a dog. They just like dropped you out.
Yeah.
Right.
With my stuff, gave me a little bit of money.
Yeah. And then survive.
Yeah, survive kind of, never been on my own before. So, I started, I think it was like my first night there, I'm sitting against the wall and, some people who ended up becoming like really good friends of mine for several years. He go like, "Hey, youngster, come here. Man, what are you doing sitting all over by yourself like that, man? Come on, man." Right. So I was like, okay, all right, cool. Right. So I kind of had like a little street family. But when I was living homeless on East Lancaster in downtown Fort Worth, that's when my addiction, it was okay for like the first couple of years, but then that's when my addiction took off.
Yeah. So you were using it first to build a part of the group.
Yeah.
And now why were you using? Just to kind of shut everything down?
Yeah, I think I was just using it to kind of shut everything out and, just to try to, because I'm not sure if a lot of people, only like the people who use that drug know. It kind of helps us be the person that, like, we're invincible, like we can do anything. Right. It kind of puts that facade on, like, even though you're probably been up 3 or 4 days, but you're still, it's just a facade, because what we're actually doing is we're actually trying to hide our own problems with more problems. And then when that high goes away, you're like, oh my gosh, it's still there. So then whether you sleep it off or just continue to get high, it's all what you do. What did you eat on the streets? Like they had like this little card, kind of like an ID card, but it was for like the homeless. It's called a scan card. Okay. And you had to go do a TV testing, and I think that was it. Like I was able to go get the New Gospel Mission, the Salvation Army with this card, and that's also how I got in. But when I first came there wasn't none of that. Like, you just stood in a line. If you wanted to eat first, you show up like an hour and a half early just to stand in line just to get this meal. So who had the best food? It depends, really. Okay. It depends. on the day? On what day. Okay. And see, back then, people would bring food all the time, like churches, organizations. And I know Beautiful Feet, which, they would do breakfast and I think lunch on certain days. Yeah. And then Wednesday night was dinner. Yeah. I think you had to go to service first, then eat dinner, or was it dinner then service? I don't remember. Did you like going to service? I mean, you were hungry. I mean, when I first started going, I just kind of went for the food. Yes. The only thing, like the New Gospel Mission, they made you sit through a 35-minute sermon.
Okay.
Before you ate.
Okay.
To kind of, because they let the residents eat, so they get in time to kind of get everything cleaned up or whatever.
That's kind of like Jesus. Jesus would say, like, listen to me preach for 35 minutes and then I'll give you something to eat, right?
Right.
No, they're really good missions. They're beautiful feet.
Yes, Beautiful Feet was probably one of my best ones.
It's very unique. The guy that runs Beautiful Feet, Mike Myers.
Yeah.
Not that Michael Myers, right?
Yeah.
That's a whole nother one. But really good guy.
Yeah.
Did you see Jesus on him the first time you met him?
Yes. Like I'm like, man, there's something about this guy.
He's a little crazy too.
Yeah.
Fun crazy, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he's about as thrown off as some of the people that were on the streets. But it was cool because Mike kind of brought it. The Union Gospel Missions and whatever, they were more kind of setting a point, or like, oh, we gotta do this program. But see, Mike was just out there trying to spread the love of Jesus.
So you're talking about religion,
yes,
versus relationship.
Yes.
Mike would be with you,
yes,
where other missions would make it about a religious experience.
Yes.
Do this, say this, or attend this.
Right.
But Mike would join you in the streets.
Yes.
Much like Jesus, right?
Right. So like Mike, he brought in like every summer, like every spring break around the holidays, like a certain group of different kids would come. And like, I'm not sure how, but there's a skit of, I'm pretty sure you've seen this. It's a boy and a girl, and they're doing the skit of a guy doing like kind of drinking or whatever. Yes. And then, he's following Jesus, and he kind of turns to drugs and alcohol, and then Jesus comes back with open arms. Mm-hmm. Have you seen that skit?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
I've seen that at Beautiful Feet.
Is that the day you gave your life to Jesus?
I don't think I truly did that yet.
Okay.
But I did, it did kind of open my doors, a little bit more.
Right.
Through the churches that would come, not only Beautiful Feet, but there was also another church that would meet at the little park.
Right.
Through them, and just kind of like still going to NA meetings when I could,
Yeah. At this point, you wanted to get off, right?
I mean, at the time, I was more kind of like in limbo.
Okay.
Like I still wanted to do something, still do the same things, but I wanted something different out of result. But you can't get nothing different if nothing changes.
Say that again.
Huh?
Say that again. That's pretty good.
I don't even remember what I just so you can't get nothing different if you keep doing the same things.
There we go.
You know what that's called?
What is that?
Insanity.
Oh, okay.
Doing the same thing
are you
over
calling,
and over,
yeah.
expecting different
Sometimes
results.
I'm insane.
Yeah. But so, I found my first time going to prison while living on the streets of Fort Worth. Mm-hmm. State jail. I went to state jail twice while living on the streets. I've seen so many things happen that like I can't even really unseen. Like I seen a guy get killed by the animal hospital. A guy stabbed him to death with an ice pick, and like me and my son's mom, we were walking by. Who was pregnant at the time with our son. And all I hear is this guy saying, help me,
right,
help me. And, when you're, see, the streets is kind of like prison. Uh-huh. You really can't go telling what you've seen. And she was like, we gotta, I said, no, leave, because like I'm known out there. You're kind of only known because you are with me.
Right.
And that's going to cause a lot of problems.
Right.
So like when the unmarked laws officers started coming,
yeah,
like, hey, what were you doing? Oh, they were just trying to talk to us, They're like, yeah, they're like, no, he wouldn't do that. So because like I had a reputation out there, so like everybody knew me, and so that reputation kind of saved me some. A little bit, because like everybody just kind of shrugged it off.
Yeah. So when did you come into a relationship with Jesus?
Actually, it's crazy. I think I actually became into a relationship with Jesus on May 1st, 2021.
Okay. You want to be a little bit more specific than that?
Okay. So,
no, I'm joking. That's pretty specific, man.
Yeah.
May what?
May 1st, 2021. That is also my clean date.
Oh, clean. Okay. When you came into a relationship.
Yeah, like fully.
That was done.
Yeah.
Drugs were over.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Because like my wife, Peggy, we had been together, I don't know how many years at that point, probably like 2 or 3, or roughly around that time. But this woman stuck through me, even through my addiction.
Right.
I mean, I've done things to her that I'm not proud of, and I know she's done things. I'm not going to really go into this, but you know, I'm not proud to say, but you know, we've gotten into arguments, fights, where I've hit her, she's hit me. We've thrown wood logs at each other because we used to do firewood together.
Okay. But we're not going to go into details. We're not going to go into no details.
But she loved me through my addiction.
Okay.
Me leaving her at hotel rooms to go back down to Fort Worth, go run off girls, you know, doing, and she stuck by with me through it all.
So why May the first? Yeah. Why? What was big on that day?
I was actually on the run from Texas. Me and her, we were living in a small town of Hollis, Oklahoma.
Okay.
The neighbor had called the laws because Peggy had told the neighbor about our little tissy. Mm-hmm. So I was high, and I was hiding in this abandoned house that was actually the brother or some kind of relation of the lady who we bought the house from.
Okay. So you were hiding in this house.
Yeah, that had burned down.
Okay.
And I see this wall. I'm like, no, there's no way. And then there was only one person who knew where I was, because he told me to go there.
Right.
So it was a setup to get me kind of hiding out there for the law to come in with the neighbor, no less.
Yeah.
I remember I had some drugs. And I'm like, I'm not sure what the rules are down here, but I was already on the run from Texas for possessions under a gram ×2. Got out on bond. Got caught with it again. Peggy's made me sit there for 6, 7, 8 months, however long. And then I remember telling myself when we started planning to move away from that area, I said, you know, eventually they're going to catch me because I didn't report for my bond UA.
Right.
I'm like, they're going to catch me one of these days. Driving through Granbury while we were selling firewood was so nerve-wracking because, like, they know my wife. They know at this time that I'm with her 98% of the time. Right. So anytime we could have gotten pulled over, and I'm driving.
Yeah.
So it was nerve-wracking driving through Granbury.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know, I told myself, you know, one day I'm going to give myself one good last run. And when they catch me and I'm done.
Right.
So I swallowed it up because I was going to be danged if I got caught with another possession charge. So I've probably been at this little jail for probably, I don't know, a day or two. You know, once the drugs had worn down and everything was kind of coming into place. You know, I remember praying to God. I said, God, please just take the urge and the desire to use methamphetamines when I get out. Because I can't keep doing this. You know, it's crazy. There was a Bible in there, and I picked it up, and somehow I turned to Numbers 30, verse 2.
Okay.
I started reading, like, I just opened it, and like,
It's not the place people usually pick up the Bible and start reading.
Yeah, so like I was just kind of flipping through, just kind of scanning it, and you know, and Numbers 30 verse 2 stood out to me, and it says, "If a man vows a vow to God, he is to honor that vow. He is not to break that vow to God."
Yeah.
And just now that I've been out, I get off parole on the end of August, from doing my prison stint.
Yeah.
Because lo and behold, Hood County is going to come get you wherever you are. Right. It doesn't matter where you are.
Right.
Like California.
Yeah.
The guys that I rode with for, I don't know, 7-8 hours from Hollis, Oklahoma. They drove, paid for these people to go pick them up in California just to bring them back to Hood County. So like Hood County will come get you wherever you are.
There you go.
Yeah.
There's your warning.
Yeah.
Public service announcement right there.
Yeah. So, but in a way, I know that when that happened.
So getting caught was the best gift of all for you.
Yeah. I mean, because like I knew eventually I was going to be caught. I just kind of wish where I got caught at was a little bit better food, because like I kind of starved there a little bit.
And you were on the streets, man.
Yeah, I mean, like
it's like you ate better on the streets than you did in jail.
In this jail, because everything came from the hospital. So like, no salt, no nothing, little bitty portions, and every night we got.
Well, there's consequences, right? I mean, you're living in the consequences. Yeah.
Like every night it was the same thing: 2 sandwiches, I think a bag of chips, and a thing of cookies every night. I kind of wish they would have gave that to us for lunch. Then actually gave us like the hot, warm meal, somewhat warm meal that we got for lunch.
You're in jail.
Yeah.
I guess that jail didn't have like room service and things like that. No. Okay. So thanks for bringing some humor to this.
Yes.
But it's painful. It was very costly.
I mean, it's not as painful as now,
but I mean in the moments,
yeah, because like when you're in jail or in prison, like all you have is time is to sit
and think,
and you're the people in there are not your worst enemies.
Yeah, while
you're sitting in there, your mind is your worst enemy.
Regrets.
The shoulda, woulda, coulda. I wish I would have done, and it gets into that, like you start like, oh, poor people, I wish I would have done this instead of done that,
right?
So, and while I was in prison, like everything was kind of okay. Until they
not that we want anyone to go to prison. Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's not okay, but I mean, you were finding a place. At least you were. Everything was stable.
Yes, and until they shipped me to the Montford unit.
Okay.
In Lubbock, Texas.
Okay. Let's not go into details.
Well, they took me from a regular inmate to a trustee inmate.
Oh.
Yes.
So you had responsibility.
Yes.
Identity.
Yes, but
my God!
But at the same time,
I thought we were going another way with this.
No. So, like at the point of me coming this, I'm at the psych ward. We have our own little fenced area away from the hospital, but the things that I seen in there made me like, man, I do not ever want to come back to this place.
Right.
Just to kind of give you,
it's rough. I've seen some of those places, unfortunately.
Yes, I mean it is rough.
Yeah. And so you were working there.
Yes, right? Cleaning up people's hallways.
Okay.
Cleaning up the rooms that had somebody took and drew all over, or I mean it was bad, but
so that was a gift too.
Yes.
Because you could see how bad it can get.
Yes. And so I remember telling my wife, I told her, because at this time, before the prison sentence, we would go to church when we could. But I told her, I said, while I was at the Mumford, have you ever heard of Kairos?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so like I started going to like the little prayer and share thing.
Yeah.
And they did the big Kairos.
Right.
And I was like, man. Then they were talking about, free world food, McDonald's. I'm like, yeah, I want to go. But God had a different plans for me.
Okay.
So when I signed up for Kairos, it's probably been like a month that it already done started. And when they posted the list for Kairos, my name was on there. I'm like, yeah. And like I heard, he's like, I didn't choose you because you wanted to go. I chose you because I want you to hear a message. And I think it was the second day we're at the tables.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy that had just left there, I think like 26 months prior to him coming back to Kairos.
Yeah.
But not as an inmate, but as a person serving. He told me, he goes, I don't know why, but God told me to tell you this, that whatever you're holding on to, you need to let it go because it's going to keep holding you back.
Oh, wow.
And like it was...
What were you holding on to?
I guess it was the pain and the regret of my father not being there.
Say that again.
Can
you look into the camera and just look into that camera? What was it that you were holding on to again? The pain of what?
The pain and regret of my father not being there for me when I needed him. Fathers
are important. And I've sit here a couple of times and I can't apologize for your dad, but yeah. I do hate that you experienced that.
Yeah.
And so you let that go.
Yeah.
Slowly.
I mean, I'm still kind of coming.
Right.
And, because I don't know. At this point, at first, I wanted to know the story.
Yeah.
But, like my father calls me every weekend.
Yeah.
We do video. I get to do a video visits with him whenever
okay.
I got like while me and Peggy were still living in Baytown.
Uh-huh.
I got to see him one time in person.
Okay.
I think twice. Once that summer and once before we moved back up here to Stephenville.
Okay. Let's jump forward.
Yeah,
okay.
Jump forward,
yeah.
Rabbit hop.
Yeah. Let's jump forward quickly, and wrap this up. Because I don't want it to be so long people might not jump on. Right.
Right.
But your story is painfully amazing. Because you can see God's grace even in the midst of the dark spots.
Yeah.
As well. The Mike Myers, religion wasn't it. Relationship. Somebody saying, "Hey, I love Jesus. I'm gonna be with you where you are on the street."
Yeah.
And now, I've never asked you this question, and I know there's one thing I know about you, Will. You're gonna be completely 100% honest. So, kind of nervous about asking this, but I'm going to. Why did you choose to come to Timber Ridge?
It's a funny story, actually. Okay, so we were living with my wife's daughter's boyfriend's grandmother.
Okay.
And so we started living over. We stayed there for a little bit. So she went to Cornerstone.
Okay.
And it's kind of crazy because my wife went to school with Christy, the pastor's wife.
Okay, very cool.
My wife's from here.
Okay.
So we were, the baby, McKenna, she goes to church with us and almost every Sunday when she's able to.
Yeah.
And she was like, Gammy, I want to go to a different church.
Okay.
So we're like, well, my wife's like, hey, there's this church over here. Let's go over here.
Uh-huh.
And, and it was kind of crazy because there was actually a rainbow that morning.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Very cool.
And like, in a way, it kind of felt like the home church down in Baytown that we used to go to called Faith Family.
Okay.
it's not as big, but I mean, it kind of felt like the same vibe, kind of.
Yeah.
When we came here. So, and then I was like, I think it was around the time that y'all were doing the Men's Summit thing.
Okay.
And I was like, hey, I want to go try. I've never done something like that before. So I was like, well, let's see how much it costs. So I got a hold of Jared. And that guy's a goofball, but I love him to death.
That guy's a what?
A goofball. But I love him to death, man.
He's a great guy.
Yes, he is. So like that's how mine and Jared's relationship formed. And after talking to him, like I thought he was the pastor.
Yeah,
and
he'd be a good pastor.
Yeah. So we had asked him to marry us, and I asked him about the Men's Summit. He goes, well, I told him, look, we don't have that much money. He goes, oh, well, there's scholarships for that. Well, we'll get you taken care of. Don't you worry. So, and that's where me and you actually first had our real conversation.
That's true.
I think it was, I'm not sure if it was on the way back or I think it was on the way there.
Probably so. When you would enter into churches, did you ever feel judged?
Some churches.
Okay.
But like most of the churches that me and my wife went to, like we went to the ones in Granbury. We went to the one it used to be called Abundant Life. It used to be right there by the post office.
Okay.
In Granbury. We went to Stonewater.
Okay.
And I think that's about all the ones that we went to.
Okay.
And we just ended up working more and more and more, doing like it was 7 days a week from sun up to sundown, cutting trees, cutting into firewood, splitting them, loading them on the trailer, or driving.
Yes.
All over Texas.
Wow.
Even into some of Louisiana.
How long now have you been clean?
4 years. It's actually to this day, it'll be 4 years and 1 week.
That's amazing. Has there ever been temptation to start using again?
There was this one time while we were still living in Baytown. I was working for a temp service at a place that sells all the PPE.
Yeah.
And this guy was telling me, and just rambling off. Yeah. He goes, hey man, do you get high? And I'm like, it kind of threw me off balance for a minute. And I was like, man, I said, God's testing me right now because here I am on parole. And I'm like, this is a test.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I do, but I'm on parole and I can't touch nothing until next year. Just to kind of
push it away.
But I mean, there are, sometimes I don't get the urges.
Good.
But like, even as an addict who's been clean, 1 year to 20 years who actually want to try to get clean.
Right.
That some things could happen in our life. We're like, man, I want to get high right now.
Right.
But see, I also read this in a book. It's by, I don't remember. It's called As a Man Thinketh.
Okay.
Everything is a thought before, like reaching your hand to open the door is a thought.
Right.
Everything is a thought until you put it into motion. Then it becomes an action.
Yeah.
So it's okay to think it, but sometimes it's not good to act on it.
Right. Right. And now then, 4 years clean.
Yeah.
You have a job. We won't go specific into where the jobs are, but you have a job and now you're training for a manager position.
Yes.
At that place.
Yes. And I've only been there for like 5 months and 20 days.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And what would you tell, and I'll let you close this out. What would you tell someone that is tempted to do drugs? And because it's going to make me cool, it's going to make me part of the group. What would you tell them? What advice would you give them to help them stay away maybe from it?
It's not words. the pain, the shame, the regret that comes from it. Yeah, it might seem like a good idea at that time, but because like once you're addicted to something, it's hard to shake. Right. Like I don't wish it on my worst enemy.
Yeah.
Like even when I was in my midst of addiction, like I was an IV user, and people were like, can you show me? Can you? No. I would tell them straight, I'm like, you do not want to do this. It'll take your addiction and your problems to another level. And no, I'm not going to do that because I wish I would have never done it.
So no, don't do it.
Don't do it.
Number 2, how about the people that are maybe in addiction right now and don't think they can get over it or through it? What advice would you give them?
Find somebody that you can talk to that is willing to go to. If you're willing and able, there are many people, like especially like at the meetings, or even like I'm pretty sure like if somebody were to come while y'all's offices were open, like, hey, look, and like y'all could tell that he's sincere because hey, look, I'm tired of living the life that I'm living. I can't do this anymore. There's resources out there for people who are willing and able to go to any links to stay clean and get clean and sober.
Right.
But see, it's all about that mindset that you have to have in the beginning.
Yeah.
If you had that strong mindset that like, I can do this. I was better off before I started drinking or using drugs. You just got to have that right mindset and the right people to push you in that direction that you want to go. And, that won't sugarcoat stuff.
Yeah.
That'll be real with you and honest, and because early on in my recovery, if the people who I went to the group with were not fully brutally honest with me, I probably would have never ever try to come back, even though like I probably have enough white key tags to build a house along with a white picket fence. Because like when people had like, oh, I got 4 or 5 years clean, or 28 years, 30, 50, I'm like, you're full of,
yeah. Thank you for us. We won't have to bleep it out.
That's yeah. I said, man, there's no way. But it's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about Jesus? What would you tell people about Jesus?
He's, whether if you're a follower or not, he's there with you even when you don't think he is.
Right.
Because there's been times where I've died in my addiction and I was brought back to life.
Yeah.
He is kind of my hope.
Yeah.
It's also said, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. And also I got to have that faith that God will see me through.
Yes.
And what is faith?
Yeah. Faith is believing in something you can't see or having hope.
Yeah. Faith is subsequently for the evidence of the hope for of the not unseen.
Yeah.
So as long as I keep that faith that I'm doing the right thing for the right reasons, it's going to happen. Yeah. But if I'm having faith to get the right reasons, but I'm doing stuff wrong, bad, so you got to mix the good with the good, and then you got to leave the bad out of it.
Right. Kind of like where Jesus said, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. In living out what he says for us to live out. Doesn't mean it's always going to go right. No. But we're going to have the joy, the peace.
It's going to come in his time when he sees it.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to tell you there's been thousands of times where I was in my active addiction where I'm like, God, please, I'm tired. I don't want to do this anymore. But see, that's also a thing. We can't just pray and not do nothing about it.
Right.
We got to be able to put our work and meet him halfway.
Right.
Because if we just expect him to take it, we're going to be sitting around here forever. I mean, we might be 6 feet under.
Right.
Right. And through my addiction, in the way that I lived my life, like, I'm not going to say my life is perfect right now. I mean, yes, I do still have struggles, anger. Yeah. I got a real bad temper sometimes. Like my wife will ask.
We don't. It's not confession. That's good.
But I'm just saying.
But you're not perfect. Yes. Neither am I.
Life is I believe that life is like a maze.
I was thinking you're going to say a box of chocolates.
No. The way I look at it,
life is a maze. Okay, I'm ready for this.
Okay, so God's going to put obstacles in our way, like a maze. Like we hit a dead end. Okay. To see how we, to see if we overcome it, or if it's too much, he's going to lift that away from us because he sees that it's too much for our shoulders. Now, I'm not going to say maybe later down in life, maybe not be the same situation, but the same kind of scenario. Yeah. He's going to see if we've learned anything from our past mistakes. Yeah. And if we overcome it, great. But if not, he's just going to lift it back up. And when he thinks that we're ready, it might be a little bit more harder this time because
that's what you've seen in your life. Huh?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to wrap it up because I don't know how long we've been in here, but it's been great.
Yes.
And what I am holding on to quickly in Matthew 25, it says the king will turn to those and say, hey, then the righteous ones will say, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink, or a stranger invite you in? When did we see you sick and invite you in, and when you're in prison, visit you? And he said, the righteous reply, that was done. What you did to the very least of these, you did unto me. And I know I stumbled over that quite a bit, but the mindset of, I come back to Mike Myers, him showing you a tangible proof of meeting you where you were, not asking you to clean up or get better, but to meet you where you are, was powerful. And we're reminded of that in Romans 5. While we were still sinners, God demonstrated his love for us.
Right.
And in that, praise God, you have victory in Jesus today. Go ahead and look at the camera real fast. Will, thank you again for joining us for podcast number 20 of Inverted Podcast. We hope you have a great rest of your day or whenever you listen to this. God bless you.